Right, welcome everyone to this new tutorial about advanced multiplayer lobby in Unreal 4. So I'm going to open up our to-do list and I actually added something to the to-do list, something I wanted to show you guys because you asking me when I published my advanced multiplayer session showcase video. You wanted to make nameplates and player floating names, and of course I want to do that as well. So basically, you know the floating else bar with the name above it. So we might have some trouble getting it implemented, getting it to work with my project versus your project because I'm in a top-down view and you're in a third-person example if you followed what I said in the first video. So that we might have some differences of behavior. So I hope we don't. And I think all we will have to do differently is the place where we spawn the nameplates and the floating name. So you shouldn't really care about that, and I will warn you at some point in the code that at that moment you will need to maybe do something different than me. So don't worry. So if we want to do floating names and nameplates, basically we're going to use the player name. We get you know in our previous video we were we were making the players able to change their name anywhere they are in the game. So in the multiplayer lobby they can change their name, and then if we the idea behind that is to use the name provided by the player to store it in memory in the game instance and to use that name while we're in the game, actually not in the out game. So carry that information from here to the game. So, but if I remember well, when we are in on the multiplayer lobby, we're not able to start the game. So, whereas we already created the logic behind that. So we are just going to add a few more buttons and recreate our logic. So we already have one button and it's filling all the space. We're going to add a text to that button, and that text is going to be start game. So I'm on the multiplayer, I'm on the HUD, I'm on the multiplayer lobby box. I'm modifying the box where players are joining with each other. I'm going to call that button create game. Oh yes, we already have one button called that way, and we're going to rename it because I believe it is not creating a game. I believe it's on the main server box. No, I'm sorry, on the main menu box. And host multiplayer. Well, actually, where is that button create game? Button create game cancel. We don't have a button that is called that way. So why doesn't he want it to call it that way? Well, never mind. We're just going to give it another name. So I'm going to hide that main menu, re-show that multiplayer box. That is this is a button MP lobby create game. I'm going to copy paste that button in that box. Oh, I'm going to add an horizontal box actually, and I'm going to put all the buttons in there. So horizontal box, I'm going to drag and drop our button in there. I'm going to say the button is supposed to fill all the empty space in the bar. I'm going to copy paste that button into that horizontal box. The new button is supposed to fill everything. That button is going to be cancel. We are likely, I'm going to rename that button real quick. Button MP lobby cancel. We're going to bind that button afterwards to the rest of our canceling logic. So we want a button to be able to say hey start game, a button to say cancel, and only the host will be able to click start game. We are not going to do that right now, but in the future we're going to do something like the host is able to click on start game but not the other players. So but we need the button to say we are ready in order to avoid people launching the game while other players are not ready. So button MP lobby ready button, just ready. So that is going to fill the empty space. This is going to be before canceling ready. So we have a ready button, a cancel button. Maybe we're going to do something like a change color button. I'm copy pasting another button. So before ready, that is going to fill the space. It's good button. MP lobby, changing that name, change color, and that is going to state change color. That is perfect. So when we click on start game, what do we want to do? Well, we were already doing something that was close to that, but I think we deleted that. So we need to rebind that to the proper thing. Remember, we did the start game logic. Actually, that's not create game button, that's start game button. We want to start the game and teleport the players through the levels and then to our basically to our game level. So what do we want to do here? We have something that says, hey, the client wants to start the game. I'm going to search for that reference in here. Okay, button solo. If I click on button solo, that starts the game. So we are going to delete that for now, since in the multiplayer lobby. No, I'm going to let that If we're on the main menu and we press solo, that starts the game. Actually, that's quite logical, and we want that. So in the multiplayer lobby, if we press start game, we're going to ask our player controller, I double click at that. We're going to ask our player controller to start the game. It's going to ask the game instance to start the traveling logic. It seems to be properly set up. We are going to bind that cancel button just for the sake of menu navigation. So when I click that cancel button, what I want to do, we already have something that make the cancel. We don't have any comments here. That's not, I'm just going to comment that because that's basically factorizing code, but without function. Cancel to main menu. So when we do click cancel, actually that's where it's going to be kinda hard to set up properly, and we're going to do it in the end of the series of tutorial. If someone hits cancel on the lobby, we need to know if it's the host. If it's the host, we need to disband the lobby. If it's one player, one client, we need to just remove his player name from the list of players. So we need to do some manipulation here, some manipulations here. So for now, we're just going to say the cancel button does nothing. I don't want to plug that anywhere for now. So we can create a game and see if players are basically if our traveling logic still works. Oh, I almost misclicked on that quit button. So I created server. I'm browsing online games. I'm going to join these games. Join, yes, I want to join. Everywhere. Hey, this is Jimmy. Lots of Jimmy. And if someone if the host clicks, actually I'm going to press start game with the host. And after, and that's removing the player entries for the host, but I believe it's going to, yep, it's going to make everyone travel because our logic didn't change. So I think it should be okay. Our players are teleported to the level. So two objectives here. Doing something like, hey, we have a nameplate, a health bar, a floating health bar above us. We have our name above the health bar, and maybe we spawn at different places. So like we are not stacking with each other. We're spawning here and there and here and there, somewhere where we specified that. So we're going to close that off. And we're going to try to use, on error. Outgame player state. Oh, that's an error for us, guys. It is pending property kill from return node. So actually what happens here is that when we are doing the traveling, when we are calling that, the different entities in the levels are being destroyed, and player states, and the player state is being one of these entities. The player state of the players is one of these entity, and is being destroyed. And our widget that is referencing that entities, so our player entry is referencing the player state, and it's being destroyed after the player states in order of destruction. So it loses that reference, and that's why we do have that error. So one thing we can do to fix that is to say that when the player controller starts the game, so on the game instance, before we actually execute that console command, we're going to tell every players to destroy every alive widgets. So basically we're going to remove widgets from viewport. So how are we going to do that? Well, we have a player queue, we have a list of registered player. We can get that list, loop through every players on that list, and basically say, hey, for every guy in there, remove, how is that called? Widget? No. What's that? A list of player controller. Can't we say remove all widgets? I believe there's something like that. Get widgets? Maybe not. Well, we're just going to call an event on the player controller that basically removes all widgets. So on our outgame player controller, let's create a new custom event that will handle the head. So a new custom event, remove head, and that event is going to be fired off on the server because the game instance is calling it. So, and we don't want the game instance to handle a thing, we want the client to handle such thing. So we're even going to say controller remove head, and it's going to say, hey, get our menu and remove from parent. So, and I believe we're going to comment that real quick, remove head, and I think that is going to do the trick. So in our game instance, we want our list of registered player, we want to cast to top-down to outgame controller because it's a list of player controller, so it doesn't know the type of class of our outgame controller, the usual, and we want to remove HUD, controller remove HUD, and when we are finished doing that, we want to travel to the next level. So that is going to fix our problem, and we will be able to switch back to our nameplates and player names. So we are going to create a widget, and that is going to handle the floating bar and the player name, and we want that widget to be added as a widget component to the different player characters. So how are we going to do that? We're going to create a new widget. User interface widget blueprint widget player nameplate. Open that up. Yup, there, up here. I need a vertical box. You're going to see real quick how is it going to look like. We need a progress bar, and we need a text. So the text is going to be above the else bar. The else bar is going to fill all the empty space. Well, actually not quite. Well, yeah, actually yes, it's going to fill all the empty space. I'm going to add a spacer in between them. I'm going to set a vertical box is going to size to its content. Or actually not. I'm going to put that in the top left of your screen. That's really important for the sake of Well, actually, adding widget component is kinda experimental for now, so it's kinda strange how it behave. So I really recommend you pay attention to how I set up my anchors and stuff like that for this moment. So this is going to be the else bar of our players, if you didn't understand yet. That is going to be the name of our players. That is going to be the space we want in between these two things. We want a space of 20, let's say. We want the text to be on the middle. I want to be that a little bit. I want my pretty little font. I want it on bold. What do I want to do? I want to reduce the size of that box. So that box is going to be 400 large and 100 height. So that is my nameplate. So if you will, I will just put my name in there. So imagine this is above our players, my else bar, my name, maybe the name is a bit too small, whereas the else bar is a bit too large. Maybe not, maybe the spacer is a bit too okay. That's not really important. I'm not going to spend hours on that. I think we are fine. So that is going to be the else bar we add to our players. So that is going to be a bit tricky from now on because I'm going to do some logic on my player character in game. And actually I'm going to redo some variables. It doesn't matter for the sake of you following that. So we're going to need what is that box going to need? This is going to need a reference to a player. So because it is supposed to display a player name and else and stuff like that. So in our graph, we're going to delete that. We're going to create a new variable that is called my target player. And here you need to specify what is the class of your character player. So for me, it's top-down character, but for you, I believe it's third-person character. So we're going to say, hey, that's public, and we are going to expose that on spawn. Alright, so when we create a widget like that, it's going to ask for a target player. Fine for now. Really fine for now. And what do we want to do? We want to say, hey, when that widget is being created, get my target player, get my name. Well, I don't have a variable name like you don't either, actually, because you have a blank character, I suppose. So open up your third-person character blueprint. And I do mean the third-person character blueprint. Don't mind everything I have. I'm going to create a new graph and I'm going to do some stuff on the graph, on that new graph, tutorial graph. Don't do that. I'm just going to, for the sake of the tutorial, I'm splitting my stuff up. So tutorial graph, I will have a list of stuff like tutorials variable, so tutorial variables. And in that variables, we're going to need a player name, so character player name. So in our outgame menu, if you remember well, the player state was holding that variable, but here we run our game, and the players all have a player character that is actually being replicated on every on every machine playing the game, so they all have access to that entity, so they can all get the variable character player name. All we need to do is to replicate that, so when the server gets the player name and restore it, it's going to be replicated on every machine. So for now we're going to say, hey, that's called invalid name, because we are going to see if that bugs. When that bugs, So we got a player name. We're going back to our, I'm going to close something down. So we are back on our player nameplate. And what do we want to do? We want to say, hey, that name is a variable and we want that to be equals to the player name. So that is going to be player name text. And we want the player text, the player name text to be equal to that name. So that's my player variable, and that's my name variable on the player I just created. So you created that on your third-person player blueprint. So we got that. When we create that, that appears with the right name, and that is a else bar. That is a progress bar that we need that to be filled depending on the health of our player. For now, you don't have a health value. I do have one, but that doesn't matter. I'm going to create a new one for the sake of this tutorial. So back on our top-down, on our character blueprint, let's get our player name. Let's duplicate that value and let's say a character else max. Let's say that's a float. Let's say that is not being replicated because the else max is not going to be changed. Well, actually, it might be, but for now, it's not going to, in this tutorial, it's not going to change, so we don't need to replicate it. Since the base value is going to be used everywhere, we're going to duplicate that, use else current. That is going to be replicated because everyone needs to be able to see the life of players being changed. So maximum else equals 100, else current equals 100, and so we can now bind the filling amount of that bar. So percent bind, create binding, get our target player, get our current else. So tutorial variables, get current else, my player, get max else, get else max, character else max, divide that by that, and we got our filament. So we got a pretty neat nameplate setup. Now all we need to do is to add that to spawn that on every character when we spawn. So how are we going to do that? How are we going to do that? That's quite so what's happening there? I'm going to hit play. I'm going to host a multiplayer game. I'm going to browse online games. So there is Jimmy. So first thing we need to store the player names when the host clicks on start game. Before we actually travel to a new level, we need to save player names in the game instance. Or when we spawn on the game, we can take that name from the save game, but since we are on the editor, all players are going to have the same name and we don't want that. So we spawn, you spawn in your third person example with your two players, you can move here and there, and the players are automatically spawned. So how are we going to do that? Well, actually, I'm not quite sure. I think we're going to... The game instance is going to save the number of players in the game, their names, and when a player spawns, its controller is going to wait a certain amount of time and to check if all players are connected. If all players are here, it's gonna tell every player's, it's gonna update their names, and it's going to tell every players to generate the nameplates. That's how we are going to do that. So back on the game instance, we are going to do the saving logic before we travel to a new level. So before we do that, we're going to say get our registered list of players. Oh well, we are actually already doing that, so that's fine. We are already casting, so before we remove the HUD, we're going to say get their name, and add that to, we're going to promote that to a variable. That variable is going to be, well, actually, registered player is not. Why are we not just using registered player? Because it's registering player controllers, and player controllers are being removed from the game when we create a new level. So we can't keep a track of that list, but we can keep a track of a list of strings. So we are going to delete that. We're going to say, hey, that's an array, and that's going to be player name list. We're going to pick that to add that, and we're going to plug that in, to plug that out, up here or here and there. And so when we create our new level and we spawn, the game instance have a list. The game instance has a list of players. So I don't know if you have a third-person player controller, but if you don't, make sure to create one third-person player controller and make sure that's on your game level. So I don't know what is your game level. For me, it's my test map. In your game level, make sure to go on settings, world settings, to actually no, to open up your, you should have a game mode in your list of blueprints. So open up your game mode and make sure you select. So I'm on my out game mode. So here we don't want to do anything. Actually, we have a menu set up. So we don't want the out game mode. You want to pick your third person game mode to open it. And here on the player controller class, you want to specify that you want your third person controller here. So either the one you created, either the one that is here by default, not the player controller here, but third person controller. So pick that, open your third person controller. So I have a lot of things. I'm going to do the same trick. I'm going to open up a new event graph, tutorial graph, and this controller is basically going to call the game instance when it spawns. Well, actually not. We're not going to do that on the controller. We're going to do that on our character. So when the character spawns, it's going to ask the game instance, what's my name? Hey, no, first he's going to register, then he's going to ask, what's my name? And we might have troubles if players are connecting in a different time, in a different order than the order they connected, they joined the lobby. If the player 3 joined the lobby and change his name as to be set as Jimmy, and then he connects, he might be spawning in the second as the second character and then gets the second name we stored, not the third one. So let me think of that real quick. I'm going to pause that video and to come back right real quick. Okay, I'm back, guys. So I figured out what we're going to do. I was actually trying to play around the fact that we're testing our prototyping in the editor environment, and that basically is not that basically forces me to change the behavior of our systems, and I should not try to do that. Basically, we're saving the names of our players, but we don't need to do that because the players already have their names in memory on their own computers. So, but using the save game object we created is going to give us the same name on every players. So that's not that's not good for the sake of this tutorial because we're not going to see different names and such. But this is supposed to be done this way because each player is supposed to be run on a different machine after all. So we are going to build the logic as if it was for a shipped game, and we're not going to see different names, but that's going to be okay, I suppose. So rather than just saving the name on the game instance, so we are going to delete that player list. So rather than saving that name here, we're just going to say, hey, when we spawn in game, so on our third person character blueprint, when we spawn, I'm going to open up my event graph and delete my begin play events. So just I can create a new one on my tutorial graph. So on my tutorial graph on event begin play, what do I want to do? I want to run an event that is called get save game, and that is going to be run on client because the client has his save game in memory on his own computer. So on event begin play, what do we want to do? We want to say, hey, do we have authority? Because the server is going to handle that logic, is going to order the client to give orders. So we're going to wait a bit. We're going to say, hey, get save game. So what does that do? Well, we are going to open up our player controller from the out game, and we're going to get, where do we load the stuff? We load the stuff here. So does save game exist? It's going to exist, we know that. So does that exist? If that does, we're going to load that. We're going to load that thing, and we're going to rebuild the set player name function. So copy load game, copy that, the cast, copy paste that here. Out game controller main save name. We can right click that variable doesn't exist here. We can right click that and say, so right click in the middle, promote to variable. Oh no, actually, yeah, create variable. We're going to drag and drop that variable. I'm going to drag and drop that variable. I'm going to rename that character. Did it carry his properties? No, it didn't. So make sure you fill that here. I copy pasted the variable from a blueprint to another, and it lost its value. Since it's handling our loading logic, we don't want to lose that value, so I'm going to copy main profile and paste that here. We want that value. So when we get save game, we load the game from slots. We load that, and we want our player name. No, well, actually, we want our server to tell everyone to. We want the server to save player name. We want a new parameter, a string that will be his name, new name. We want that to be run on server. We want the top-down save. We want to cast that. Save player name, and we want to get our name from our save game here and there. So that is going to say, hey, when I spawn, get my save game, get my name, story, tell the server to save it. So the server is going to say, hey, player names, which is a replicated variable, is that. So we're going to do the same trick we did for the player entries. No, actually we are not. I was going to bind our nameplate name to that value in order to get it replicated properly, but actually we're not going to do that. Excuse me. We're going to do something like, I'm going to say I'm busy. So what we're going to do, oh well, excuse me, not disturb me, thank you. So we need to say something like, hey, after 5 seconds, because after 5 seconds, because we are sure every players will be spawned. Well, actually we are not sure. Instead of waiting 5 seconds that every player character are spawned, we should rather be doing something like, hey, We know how many players are supposed to spawn because we stored that in the game instance, but we didn't. And we need to wait that every players are connected to tell them to create the nameplates. Because if we don't do that, we might have some lags and some players might end up without a nameplates when some others do. So, but for the sake of this tutorial, we're going to say wait 5 seconds. And then we're going to build a new event on client that says create player nameplates. That is going to be run on the owning client. And we're going to say, hey, create nameplates after 5 seconds. And we won't be creating a nameplate on our players, on our own player, but that is a really easy change, and you will be able to easily change a branch, and you will have your nameplate above your player. So what do we want to do when we create nameplates? We basically want to get all actors of class, of type, of our character. So top-down character for me, for you it should be third-person character. Plug that in. For each character, if you're not me, so if you're not me, that's where you can do something. No, I don't want that. I want a branch. B-click. So here you can just delete that branch if you want a nameplate above your player, above your own player, the local player, the client player. So I want to get all of them, and for each of them that is different, that is not equal to myself, what are we going to do? We're going to create a widget of type nameplate, and it's asking for a target player, so we're going to give it that player to feed it with that player. We're going to say we're going to add a widget component to this guy. So we're getting every players and we're giving them a widget component. We're attaching a widget to them, so it moves with them basically. So add widget components, and here is the thing that gets a little messy. That is an experimental class, so we're going to, so this is a bit tricky, but we don't really mind. We're going to plug a wire out of that. We're going to say, hey, set widget. So we're basically saying, hey, that widget component is this pin. So we're going to say the widget we just created is the widget component. And the properties we fix here, as on the widget component node, we have some stuff to do here, and that will basically says give the rules of how is the else bar drawn on our screen, and that's where you might have to do some different things than I, but maybe not. But that doesn't matter. With few tweaks you will find easily, I believe. So first thing we need to do is to say that user interface is on your screen, not the world. Second thing we need to do is to tell how big that widget is. So how big that is. We're going to check real quick. I'm going to open up my player nameplates. The box is 400 and 100 long. So I'm back on my character. I'm going to say, hey, that's 400 and 100 long. And then it's asking for a pivot. Don't know how to say in English. And that's basically the same kind of pivot you have here. So if you say I want a pivot of 0.5, it's going to be in the middle of your attachment. So here it's going to be in the middle of my player character, and it's going to be in the middle of my player character in the y-axis. So I actually want the the box to be above my character, so I need to increase the y-axis pivot. I need that to be, let's say, 3. It's going to be above its head, I believe, and in the middle. And I think if we just do that, it's supposed to be working. It's supposed to be working. Well, let's try that out. Let's hit play. Let's say I want to host a map. I want to browse online games. I want to join that game. Let's join with other players actually. I will try to break that to join instantly with 2 players, and that doesn't bug. Yep. The host is going to start the game, and we're going to wait 5 seconds to see if there are some stuff going on. Alright, it's waiting. Up, it's creating nameplates. Oh, some are called Jimmy, some other are called invalid name. But I'm going to open up that. Yep, it's really big on our screen. So we're going to reduce that size, but we have something of a beginning. So I think I'm going to wrap that video up because it's quite long and we're going to keep up in the next video. So hope you guys enjoyed that and hope to see you guys in the next video. Bye bye.